Ordering food, calling an Uber, and paying bills with our cell phones are routine activities in our daily lives. Almost without realizing it, we are changing our lifestyle and becoming increasingly sedentary. Everyday activities such as going to the nearest bakery or market, which we used to do on foot, are now done by car, which is increasingly used for short trips. Offering services has become big business, and many companies have emerged to meet this demand. One of them, created in the United States, goes one step further. Scooter has innovated by offering an electric scooter rental service in shopping malls, so that customers walk as little as possible while shopping. It may not make any sense to you, but in the country with the highest number of obese people and the least walking in the world, the service is being well received and, according to the company's website, is already available in 13 malls in different states. One of these units is located in the La Plaza Shopping Center in McAllen, a Texas city considered to have the most obese people in the country. Due to lifestyle and other factors, obesity has become one of the biggest problems in the United States and, if nothing is done, the situation is likely to get even worse in the coming decades. What factors have created the world's largest obese population? Could other countries also face the same problem? And how can obesity become a source of profit for one of the world's most dangerous industries? If you want to know the answers, watch this video, because today we're going to expand our global knowledge about the United States and the obesity epidemic affecting the country. To know if you're out of shape, it's enough to look in the mirror or the honest opinion of a friend. But to define what is overweight or obese, you have to resort to mathematics. What defines whether a person is underweight or overweight is the body mass index, known by the acronym BMI. To find the index, you divide the weight in kilograms by the height in meters squared, which is the same as multiplying the height by itself. A person who, for example, weighs 80 kilograms and is 1.70 meters tall, has a BMI of 27.68, which, according to a reference table, indicates overweight. In this case, the situation is not serious, but it does indicate that some care should be taken, since, if the BMI is equal to or higher than 30, the person in our example will be considered obese. Obesity is classified into 3 levels, with a BMI over 40 being considered morbid obesity. According to these criteria, more than 40% of Americans are obese, a percentage that may be even worse in some regions or for certain communities. Among blacks, for example, the percentage is almost 50%, and among Latinos it is barely over 45%, so let's understand why this difference exists. It is very likely that you have already noticed this in videos and some programs that show the average person in the United States, among other things because, if no selection is made, it is practically impossible to hide the problem, given that 2 out of 5 people are obese. Among children and adolescents, the situation is better, but still worrisome. According to statistics, 1 in 5 children is obese. But has this always been the case? Not really, and the figures prove it. Between 1976 and 1980, only 15% of Americans were obese. In the following decade, the percentage reached 20%, and by the end of the century it was already 30%, showing a rapid increase. Today, as we have seen, the percentage exceeds 40%, and there are 19 states out of 50 that have more than 35% obese population, while only 10 years ago there were none. But the big question is, how did the United States become a country with more than 122 million obese people? Anyone who thinks that finding a culprit for obesity is an easy task is mistaken, and many can attribute it to each individual and their choices. But the problem is somewhat more complicated. In their quest to gain ever larger market shares, companies and restaurants have begun to increase portion sizes. The famous hamburger sandwich, for example, weighed about 3.8 oz. In the 1950s, and today weighs an average of 12 oz. The same happened with the portion of French fries, which went from 2.4 oz to 6.7. To complete the traditional combo offered in fast food restaurants, the average size of soft drinks in the 1950s was about 6.7 oz, while today it is 33.8, mainly due to the fact that companies offer unlimited refills. The test is a comparison between the portion sizes served at McDonald's in England and the United States. In the comparison, the British portion of fries was 4.5 Oz, compared to 6.7 for the US version. And although the Big Mac is exactly the same size in both countries, the US soda cups are almost twice as large as those in England. And again, anyone who thinks this strategy is exclusive to fast food restaurants is mistaken. In addition to working on recipes to make their food more and more attractive, factories have also increased the size of their packaging. Just go to any supermarket in the United States, and you will see 3-liter bottles of Coca-Cola, almost 4-liter gallons of milk and juice, and many other products in giant packages. And if you're one of those who think you don't eat at all, a study has shown that the larger the portion available, the greater the amount consumed. The study showed that by increasing the portion by 50%, we eat between 10% and 30% more. Even supermarkets have something to do with it, as they place unhealthy products in full view of consumers to increase sales, such as chocolates and snacks that are strategically placed near the checkout counters. As if increasing portion sizes and packaging were not enough, the contents have also deteriorated over the years and have contributed greatly to the weight gain of the US population. Consumption of ultra-processed foods has skyrocketed in recent decades, as have obesity rates. These foods are high in sodium, industrial oils, sugars, fats, and preservatives. What's more, they are specifically formulated to please the palate, which ends up increasing their consumption. In addition, they are poor in fiber, proteins, and vitamins important for our organism. A study conducted in 2019 and published by the New York Times divided a group of people in two, providing one subgroup with only ultra-processed foods, while the other was given healthy options. Knowing the harm caused by these foods, it is not surprising to learn that members of the first group ate about 500 calories more per day than people in the other. The result was an average gain of 1 kilo in just 2 weeks. Another interesting fact about the study is that the researchers prepared meals for the two subgroups with practically the same amount of calories, but the participants were free to repeat them. In the end, it became clear that those who ate ultra-processed foods always took more food and ate larger quantities. The situation is even worse, because a diet with unprocessed foods costs on average 40% more than one with only processed foods. This helps explain why in some communities, such as Black and Latino communities, the percentage of obese people is higher, because in those communities purchasing power is lower, and eating ultra-processed foods is often not a matter of choice, but of necessity. Now imagine the accumulation of large portions of ultra-processed foods combined with a lack of physical activity. The result could not have been any different. According to a Forbes report, 84% of Americans spend at least 2 hours a day in front of the television, and overall, the amount of time Americans spend sitting has increased. Over a 15-year period, teenagers have gone from sitting 7 to 8 hours a day, while adults have gone from 5.5 to 6.15 hours a day. And walking doesn't seem to be their thing either. You've probably seen videos or pictures of streets completely empty of pedestrians, with only cars passing by. The American lifestyle, very car-oriented and lacking investment in public transportation, has created a sedentary society, dependent on cars even for short trips. An NPR article ranked Americans as the least walkable people in the world, a situation that will only get worse with the popularization of services like Skazer, the company that rents electric scooters for use in shopping malls. Not even social networks are to blame for the increase in the number of obese people, and I'm not referring to the time people spend consuming content. In recent years, a movement of influencers preaching fat acceptance has emerged, which is also known as fat pride and the anti-diet movement, among other names. Although it originated in the distant 1960s, the movement has gained momentum with social media, and although the intention is good, it ends up having the opposite effect. A report in the Washington Post shows cases of people who struggled to lose weight and, after coming into contact with influencers who preached acceptance, stopped dieting and returned to their normal routine. In addition, food companies have begun to see influencers as a highly effective advertising medium. Research conducted jointly by the Washington Post and the website The Examination analyzed more than 6,000 posts by 68 nutritionists who had more than 10,000 followers. The journalists found that about 40% of the influencers, who had a reach of more than 9 million followers, repeatedly used anti-diet speeches. Most of these influencers have ties to food manufacturers to promote their products. The company that seems to be the main user of this strategy is General Mills, which manufactures ultra-processed products full of sugar. But is this a problem unique to the United States? Outside US borders, the situation is better, but not encouraging. According to data from the World Health Organization, in the next 12 years, 1 in 4 people on the planet will be obese. It is estimated that the disease will affect 1.5 billion adults and more than 400 million children by 2035 if nothing is done. Fat-related diseases are currently among the top 3 causes of death worldwide. The only exception is sub-Saharan Africa. Even some European countries, known for their famous Mediterranean diet, are not spared. One example is Spain, where 24% of Spaniards are obese and, if we consider overweight people, the percentage rises to 61%. Again, if nothing is done, it is predicted that by 2035 the obese in Spain will represent 37% of the population. In addition to the health problems that obesity causes to individuals, the disease represents a high cost to governments. Increasing resources are devoted to treatment and, among OECD countries, around 8% of the annual health budget is allocated to the treatment of obesity-related diseases. In the United States, of course, this percentage rises to 14%. According to a report in the newspaper El País, obesity reduces countries' GDP by more than 3% and is expected to generate an economic impact of more than $4 trillion by 2035. But not everyone thinks this is a bad thing, and for one sector in particular, the rise of obesity could become a real goldmine. According to a report by Goldman Sachs, the manufacture of anti-obesity drugs is expected to be the pharmaceutical industry's biggest business this decade, worth around $100 billion a year between now and 2030. A clear example of this occurred last year when the Danish laboratory Novo Nordisk became the most valuable company on the European stock exchanges. The share price rise came after the drug Ozempic proved effective in weight loss, despite being developed to treat diabetes. In the first half of last year alone, the drug generated more than $60 billion in revenues for the company. Also entering this market is the US laboratory Eli Lilly, which has just obtained approval for the drug Zepbound, developed exclusively for slimming purposes. Even the American Pediatric Society recommends the use of these drugs in adolescent patients, but pediatricians are still reluctant to take this measure because the long-term side effects are unknown. And they are absolutely right in this decision, because the history of pharmaceutical companies is full of abuses, omission of information, and many other actions that make these companies look more like mafia organizations. And that is exactly what we show in this on-screen video. Just click on it. Thanks to all of you who joined us, and see you next time.